Just after midnight on Friday, the United States made good on its threat to impose 25% tariffs on $34 billion worth of Chinese imported goods. China responded with tariffs of its own, targeting $34 billion worth of U.S. exports to their country. Tariffs and counter tariffs mark the start of an all-out trade war, and it is not just China that we're fighting with. In total, President Trump has now slapped hefty tariffs on $85 billion worth of imports from America's top trading partners: China, Canada, Mexico, the European Union, and Japan. All but Japan have retaliated with similar tariffs of their own, bringing the total tally to $165 billion worth of trade hit so far this week in the global trade war. But Trump, he has threatened to do much more damage, saying he is ready to put tariffs on another $400 billion worth of Chinese imports. And the president's team is looking into possible tariffs on $360 billion worth of auto, truck, and car parts that were imported last year. But currently, our economy is incredibly strong, adding 213,000 jobs last month with a low 4% unemployment rate. If the U.S. economy continues to add 200,000 jobs each month, the trade war will not immediately hurt Trump politically. But if a drawn-out trade war triggers a wave of layoffs at U.S. export firms, well, then all bets are off.
And that is really hard to calculate because the economy is a much bigger, wilder animal than can be controlled by the President of the United States. Joining us is former Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade under President George W. Bush, Frank Lavin. Frank, I mean, it is a dangerous game to play because Stephanie's right. Unemployment has been trending lower for many, many years, and it continues under President Trump. But there are potential unintended consequences of a trade war.
Well, Ali, I think you're exactly right. When you put in tariffs, you're adding cost. You're adding cost to business. You're hurting consumers. You're slowing down economic growth. So it's never good news for the economy putting in tariffs. Sometimes it's a necessary tactical move to help solve a problem. But boy, don't let it become an end in itself. Be very light. Be very short term if you're going to use tariffs.
Well, China and the United States both believe they have the upper hand in this, and there's no negotiations that we're aware of currently underway. So between these two, so how long can this go on?
Well, yeah, Steph, that also reflects there's a political dimension to this as well as an economic dimension, and both countries have their politics. Nobody in China can appear just to be compliant or submissive to a foreign power. So they have to at least initially come across as defiant and rebuff the United States. Now, after a bit of a stalemate, you can work out a solution. Look, I'm generally optimistic that we're going to get there, but it might be a few months of friction and a few months of bad economic news before this is finally resolved.
But Frank, like when President Trump is talking to NATO countries, generally speaking, those leaders are all in a similar position to his, right? Strong positions help you out politically, domestically. But when dealing with China, the math is a little bit different because President Xi is president for as long as he'd like to be, and the Chinese generally work off of 5-year and longer plans. So the political impact in China from these increased costs is different from the political impact in America.
Yeah, I think he has more leeway, but look, he also has a public persona and a public role, and he has to position himself as the steward of broad national interests. So, yeah, he's not going to get day-to-day criticism. But I would say Donald Trump, the U.S. public will give a U.S. president a lot of leeway as well to say, if you think we need to be tough with China, go be tough with China. Now, somebody observed a minute ago, if that starts hurting the overall economy, then you start paying a price for it. Right. So I think a lot of people in the U.S. are asking questions, well, why did you get in the quarrel with Canada about milk? Why are you in a quarrel with Germany about steel? Are these really front and center issues? Right. Are these really as important as China?
It's interesting you say that because, you know, Vaughn Hilliard and Ben Popkin, our reporters, have been out talking to farmers, lobstermen, whiskey producers, things like that. They're giving Trump some time. Yeah. They're saying, look, maybe this is good. And when I spoke to somebody in Canada about how are Canadians responding to the tough talk from Trudeau, they're giving Trudeau time. So people do like it when their leaders feel a little bit tough, Frank.
I think so, and let's remember the U.S. economy is performing very strongly. I mean, the good news sort of now overwhelms the bad news. So these tariffs are a cost to the economy. They definitely aren't helpful, but there's so much good news out there that there's a little bit of capability on our side, on the U.S. side, to endure some bad news.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here. To watch the latest interviews and highlights, you can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.